Hi everyone. I'm going Facebook Live today to talk to you about some things that are happening in Thailand. I can't tell if I'm live. I think I am. Okay. Every time I get home, I think I have to write an article about all the latest outrages that are happening in Thailand, and I never get very far because as soon as I start writing, a new outrage happens and I never get anything done. So today, because today is probably, what is this, Thursday? So it's going to be 7 o'clock in the morning in Thailand on a Friday. Okay, so this will happen in 2 days. There's a big protest planned. It could be a big disaster because a lot of the leaders of the Thai pro-democracy movement have been charged with sedition. So the junta has gone after the most popular and the best people in Thailand. These people are good people, and I want to make you aware of who they are and their backstory, hopefully to try to protect them, because it's kind of unbelievable what's happening. So I'm just going to tell you, because I saw it play out myself over about 4 years. So when the coup happened in Thailand in 2014, I got recruited into the Thai pro-democracy movement, and I have a unusual story here. I have no connection to Thailand, and I don't live in Thailand, but strangely enough, I'm able to halfway speak and read the language. So when the crisis happened in this country, I didn't pay so much attention. I had to keep my focus on the Thai human rights and keep following that story so I could tell it to the world. So this is my opportunity to speak out before events happen on this weekend. Every day, like I said, I come home and I want to write an article. I started writing an article last weekend about an activist named Ekachai Hongkongwan. I said he's being targeted by the junta. I only got part 1 of my story about all the adventures of Ekachai Hongkongwan finished before he was charged with sedition. And then I had bigger problems to worry about and it was too late to protect him. They, they have no shame. They'll go after the biggest and most important activists, even though they're totally peaceful. So I have to change my focus. Instead of talking about Ekachai Hongkongwan, I'll tell you about him if I have time. Instead, I'll start by telling you about a woman whose name is Bo. Bo, like the English word bow, like a little bow. And this will help you remember who she is, because she's a pretty, tiny little woman who's usually wearing pink, very, very neat and soft-spoken. She is sometime has been a TV host, so she's kind of well-known. Well, she kind of came out of the blue when the coup happened, became an activist just out of the blue. She was fed up. And then especially when the Pai Dao Din thing happened, I can relate to her because, as you know, I'm very upset about the Pai Dao Din thing. And if I talk about that, I might even get upset because he's very, very young. But anyways, Bo is also a mother. She started campaigning for Pai Dao Din when nobody else stood up for him. And she would start going Facebook Live outside of his prison, and she would also be outside the prisons of other political prisoners waiting for them to be released or to go into jail. She'd be there to interview people at protests. So she just kind of came out of the blue. She was a lone wolf. She wasn't tightly connected to the other activists. And she speaks English perfectly. I don't know her, but I said hi to her once in the comments. So anyways, this is just a little bit of mind reading, but I actually did hear her say this once. She said that she felt maybe she was safer than some of the activists out in the rural areas that nobody's watching, because she is an urban person. She speaks perfect English. She knows a lot of people. She probably thought she was a little bit more protected than some other people. However, as we know in Thailand, eventually they turn around and they'll just attack the most sympathetic person, like they did just last week after they attacked Pai Dao Din, accusing him of lèse-majesty for just sharing a BBC News article about the king. For a whole year, there was there was 2,800 other people who also shared that article that they did not attack. But there was another activist who was a friend of Pai's who also very openly shared that article and said, "I'm not afraid, I'm sharing the article." And she did it, and she had police visiting her house regularly for a year. And they would come by and they would just say they wanted to speak with her and they just wanted to encourage her not to be an activist, and this was all for her good. And they actually came so often they became friends with her parents. She ignored them, she wouldn't talk to them, but they sat around and chatted with her parents, these, minders that followed her around. But, because she was a pretty young woman, they probably, didn't want to attack her as directly as they had attacked Pai Dao Din. But just like 2 weeks ago, they did attack her. And one morning she wakes up and she has a notice that she has to pick up the post office that she also has been accused of lèse-majesty for sharing the same article as Pai Dao Din, which happened over a year ago. So belatedly, she wakes up one morning, finds out she's been charged, had to flee the country within hours. She fled the country within hours and left behind everyone that she knows, cannot return for 15 years, which is the statute of limitations on lèse-majesty. So, even though Khun Bo is so pretty and so famous, it's entirely possible they're going to turn on her and attack her over nothing. So what happened was that she was one of the leaders of a protest a few weeks ago at this skywalk, and they were drawing attention to the fact that the deputy dictator, he calls himself the deputy prime minister, has a scandal that's ongoing. He's very unpopular because he was found to own, or be wearing at least, all these very expensive watches, and that leads one to suspect, of course, that he's taking kickbacks for handing out favors that you get to do when you are a dictator or a deputy dictator. So people had found, when they found the first extremely expensive watch, and he couldn't account for that watch, he said that he borrowed it from a friend, then everyone, got interested, and they started hunting through, they started hunting online to find other pictures of him, and they found 25 watches that added up to $1.5 million. So obviously there's a lot of jokes that can result from that. They call him the Watchman and tell him his time is up and stuff like this. Well, so things are not going very well for this deputy dictator, and a lot of people are calling for him to step down. So that's what the activists were doing on the skywalk, and they're also were asking for these elections that have been postponed for 4 years. Well, because they were asking for elections and making fun of the deputy dictator and all of his watches, they were accused of sedition. And so Bo is one of 7 activists who were accused of sedition. And like I said, the other activists are as famous as she is. I'll just stick to her for a minute. So after she was accused of sedition, she went outside with tape over her face, like a few days later, and stood and saluted the flag for 30 minutes with tape over her face. And so you can see how dangerous these people are. They're, you know, causing uprisings and stuff by standing with tape over their mouths. That's the kind of protest these people do. So, so soon after that, then the junta went back and it was like, okay, now we're going to go back to that original protest on the skywalk, and now we're going to charge 39 of the people who were there, including some of the bystanders. And this time they charged them with standing within 150 meters of the palace. There's a law against having a protest within 150 meters of the palace. Now this is a code, because once, you know, you mention the king or the palace, ooh, this is so, you know, scary, because it's a kind of a warning, you know, don't even mention the palace. Too scary, because if you do anything against the palace, that's lèse majesty. That's when they can get you for 15 years. So this is a coded message. And there's another law, which is that you're not allowed to stand in groups of more than 4 people. Now, this has been a law ever since the coup. Even though the junta written constitution is now in place, the junta written constitution guarantees freedom of assembly. And you can see how much that guarantee is worth, because that constitution is in effect. They have freedom of assembly, and they can't stand in groups of more than 4 people for political purposes. Well, anyways, they didn't use that law. They used a law to say that they were too close to the palace. Now, very ironically, now at this point, it looked like they're targeting these activists, these pro-democracy activists. Well, to prove that they were even-handed and that they weren't targeting the activists, after this, then they go back and they found out that there was a counter-protest at the same time. People who loved the dictator, they were protesting at the same time. So they went back and they took like 30 of those people and charged them with standing in groups of more than 4. And so, you know, they went and they double-crossed their own people just to try to pretend that they were being even-handed. So they're not letting anyone stand in groups of more than 4. Now, this isn't the only protest going on. This is all going on in Bangkok. Meanwhile, out in the more rural areas, there's actually a march going on from Bangkok all the way to Khon Kaen, where Pai Dao Din is in jail. And it's a really long march, and I think it may be over now. But there's like more than 100 people marching in that. They were stopped by 100 police officers on day 1. And in order to get around the rules, they broke into groups of 4, because you are allowed to be in groups of 4. And they started marching in groups of 4. And they're still getting harassed all along the way. And as they go, they go Facebook Live, and that helps protect them, but it doesn't totally protect them, because they have been charged with different things and threatened with jail time. And apparently one of the people from the We Walk campaign who was charged for walking is 16, is a minor, and has some mental disability. So, you know, they are shameless. They'll go after anybody. If you do have a mental disability or a physical disability, it's almost like you're more likely to get attacked by them, because they don't even know what's going to be bad press for them. Well, anyhow, speaking of bad press, after Kun Bo, she stood, you know, for 30 minutes with tape over her mouth. A few days later, she gave another talk to the press, and then she walked halfway through this Facebook Live video. She walks into the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand. I watched this thing play out myself live, and so I saw it. I was horrified. She walks into what looks to me, I didn't know it was at that time, that was the Foreign Correspondents Club. It looks to me like she walks into a private party. She obviously knows everybody there. They know her by name. And she says later, yes, I am a member of that club. So she walks into a private club, and all the reporters and all the journalists cluster around her. And then a non-Thai person, who it turns out was Jonathan Head of the BBC, shouts, you can't have a press conference. I'm sorry, they'll shut the place down. Sorry, everybody, no, you can't. And then suggests that they all pretend to mingle in groups of 4. And so here they are indoors in a private place, mingling, pretending to mingle in groups of 4. No, they're really there to interview her. That's the real purpose of them. So she's sitting with only 3 people beside her. Everyone else jumps up and runs except for 3 people. And the other people furtively wander about 15 feet away from her and then turn around and take a few snapshots of her and point their cameras at her for a couple of minutes, then turn around and get a drink from the bar, and then turn around and point a camera at her. And they're all pretending to mingle in groups of 4 for the most Orwellian thing you've ever seen, especially the fact that some English-speaking person suggests this solution. That means they do not realize how low they have gone. And nobody is willing to sit beside her except 2 of her friends, apparently, and a journalist whose name is Prawit Rojanaplut. And he has just won the International Press Freedom Award. He's an amazing journalist. And he's also been accused of sedition, and he's not backing down. So he sat next to her, and he got the whole story from her, and he wrote it up the next day. And what he wrote in his story, he says that she considers herself a person who's already dead. She has a 10-year-old son, and if she goes to jail, she will give her son to her ex-husband to raise. She said that what's more frightening than being imprisoned is letting her son see that nothing is being done and letting evil prevail over good. All right, so these are the kind of people that they are willing to attack. I want the world to know what is happening. All right. I think I might have covered her pretty much. Another person, and I'll just quickly tell you about this other person. His first name is Netawit. Now, I've been watching this thing for 4 years. Netawit began as this high school kid, this very precocious high school kid who he just looks like a little kid. He's got these big nerdy glasses, and you can't believe that a little kid could be that strong. Well, now he's grown up. And when he was in high school, he was involved in high school politics. And he had a blog where he argued against the military draft. It was one of his issues. Okay, so this is a little kid who has a blog and has a following arguing about politics. When he gets to his first year of university as a freshman, he is immediately elected the president of student council. And as president of student council, he wants to implement the kind of democratic reforms that one can implement given the fact that there's a junta government. He just wants to start wherever he can start promoting democratic values. So his first thing to promote democratic values is to have a campaign against not all hazing, but violent hazing, non-consensual hazing, and hazing that involves unsanitary, like you eat this, something dangerous. So, for instance, the student council all backed that. They all went along with that, and they put out these brochures with pictures and demonstrating, guidelines. Please don't, do this unsanitary thing. Please don't do something non-consensual. Please don't do something violent. Okay, these are all good suggestions, right? And another thing that Netawit suggested was that there be a no prostration zone. At Chulalongkorn University, his university, there's a tradition where everybody prostrates. That means that you bow all the way on the ground to the statue of King Chulalongkorn, who ironically is famous for having gotten rid of the prostration laws. King Chulalongkorn was progressive enough that he didn't want Thais to prostrate themselves anymore to the king. So ironically, Chulalongkorn University, named after King Chulalongkorn, honors him by prostrating in front of his statue. So Netawit suggested that the students be given the option to not prostrate or prostrate, which they agreed to. So at the initiation ceremony at the school, where all the students were encouraged, to, according to tradition, prostrate themselves, started raining, and because it was raining, Netawit thought that they really shouldn't have had to prostrate themselves in the mud or whatever, and so he gets mad and he turns around and just walks away, and some of the other student council follows him. So he's standing up and everybody else is bowing, and one of the professors grabs the second person who walks away around the neck and attacks him. And that caused a big scene, because that guy defended himself by saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that, but I just became enraged. I just couldn't stand it." So anyways, Netawit has put up with a lot, and this is the kind of person he is. And now he's been accused of sedition. Another person who's been accused of sedition is Sirawit Sarawat, who was the leader of the New Democracy movement. He has been in and out and in and out and in and out of jail. And usually when these people are this famous, they can't quite, that dare to attack them. Now, his nickname is Ja Nu, and his mother is the one who was accused of lèse majesty for saying "yeah" in a text message. So one of Ja Nu's friends wrote something to her. The mother wrote something to the mother in a text message that had lèse majesty content, and she said, "Yeah," like, "I'm listening." You don't even know that she agreed. It just means, "Yeah, I'm still listening to what you're saying." And that's what she typed in a text message. Well, because at that time they didn't dare go after John New, he was too famous, they grabbed his mother and threw her in jail. This happened to be the day before Mother's Day in the United States. A really bad move for them. They did let her out a few days later, but all these people who have charges against them, even if it's just harassment and they're not seriously going to throw them in jail, they have to hire lawyers. They have to be ready at any moment for their lives to be ruined and to seriously go to jail, just like happened to Pai Dao Din, and just like happened to the girl Cartoon, who was just charged just like Pai Dao Din. So let me think. Some of the things that John Yu has done, I remember the last time that he was arrested, he was in this group that did a pantomime in front of a temple where a lot of people had been shot by police during some protests. The people went into the temple thinking, just like when you run into a church, this is off limits, this is a safe zone. Well, the police shot into the temple and killed at least 4 people. So they went to the temple on the anniversary of this, incident, and they were they had their faces painted with like pantomime, and they were pretending to be ghosts, and they had lamps. And so they were just walking around in pantomime with like white paint on their face with lamps, looking for the truth is what they got arrested. This is the kind of things they get arrested for. This is what freedom of assembly and freedom of speech means in Thailand today. Okay, and Ekachai Hong Kong Wan. Ekachai Hong Kong Wan, I started writing about to protect him. He was a lèse-majesty victim already, spent almost 3 years in jail for selling copies of a Australian news documentary that was trying to warn about the dangerous situation arising in Thailand as the royal succession approached. Am I saying that right? Succession, when one king follows another. And so he had copies of this video, which I watched and is like a completely, regular scholarly type thing, like not a sensational thing. They interviewed all kinds of important people for this documentary. Well, anyways, because he was selling copies of it, he went to jail for 3 years. When he got out, he started a non-profit for other lèse-majesty victims. Now, I just want to tell you this, I'm going to get distracted again, but this is how common lèse-majesty is. They say that there's about 100 a year official lèse-majesty cases. However, there's got to be more, because everyone I know, that doesn't count the people who were accused and fled the country. And to show you how prevalent the lèse-majesty is, I just got, here it is. All right, you see this CD? I got it because it's got at Carabao in it, right? This CD, right there, that's at Carabao. It says 3 Kings of Sam Cha. Sam Cha is a musical style. Well, this king of Sam Cha right here is Tom Dundee. He's a lèse-majesty victim. That's how common it is. Tom Dundee is in jail right now, 11-year sentence for 2 statements made in a speech. They double charged him. They double charged him because not only did he make the statements, but then they went up online in a YouTube. That's computer crime. So then you can give him some more time for that. And just a couple weeks ago, even though he's in jail for 11 years, they went back to that same speech, pulled out another statement, and added some more charges on. Okay? So, what was I saying? I said Ekachai Hong Kong Wan started a nonprofit to raise money to help some of the lèse-majesty victims, and their lives are ruined. When this happens, we know of another lèse-majesty victim who, after she got out of jail, she's still having problems because her life was ruined. So, she has problems, having enough money not to get thrown out of her apartment. This is what happens. Most people who are accused, their life is ruined. And anyways, this happened to Ekachai Hong Kong Wan. So he's not a very happy camper. And a little while later, I'll skip right to the king's funeral. He announced that he was going to wear red on the king's funeral. And of course, on a king's funeral, the government recommends that you wear black. Not only do they recommend that you wear black, they recommend that if you're a man, you shave off your beard and mustache. And anyways, the recommendations kept getting more and more severe until it got a little North Korean-like. and everyone was kind of ducking and covering and waiting for it to be over. And Ekachai Hong Kong Wan was brave enough to post on Facebook, on the day of the king's funeral, I'm going to wear red and do something that nobody expects. Now later, when people asked him, what were you going to do? He said, to tell you the truth, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just got mad and typed that on Facebook. I can totally understand getting fed up and typing something like that on Facebook. Well, the government called him immediately and said, what are you going to do? And he said, oh, don't worry, it will be peaceful. And then as the day approached for the king's funeral, he opens up the door. It's like 2 days before the king's funeral. He opens up the door, and there's two men standing there. They grab him by both arms, drag him out of the house. He's saying, who are you, and what are you doing? They don't answer him anything. They just start dragging him out of the house. He falls on the ground. They start shouting at each other. Another police comes. And actually, he didn't know if they were police because the first two were just wearing black shirts. And so he didn't know who they were. Another police comes, and then they start playing good cop, bad cop. And then the next, I guess there's original three that were not being nice to him. But then another one comes and says, oh, I apologize. They should never have done that. So sorry. No, we just came to talk to you. And they tried to extract a promise from him that he wasn't going to wear a red shirt on the day of the king's funeral. And he said that it was his right to wear a red shirt, and he was going to wear a red shirt. And at that point, they said, you know, how would you like to go to a resort for 3 days? And he said, I don't want to go to a resort for 3 days. And they said, well, your other choice is to go to jail. And he went, okay, I'll go to a resort. And so then they said to him, you can also take your mother. And he said, I don't want to take my mother. I'd rather take a friend. So they said, all right. And he says, well, you know, they'd already taken his phone. He got his phone back so he could call up his friends, see if anyone wanted to go to a resort with him. And unsurprisingly, when he called 3 different friends and told them that, you know, as it turned out to be 20 police that came to his house. And, you know, some of them were outside, some of them were inside. When he said that 20 police came to his house and invited him to a resort, none of his friends wanted to go with him. So he ended up going by himself. And it turned out to be a real resort. It was a little bit boring, but he went to a resort and they brought him back safe. And this is the way the junta is. Sometimes they'll throw you in jail for 3 years, and sometimes they'll take you to a resort. And they'll just keep harassing you until you stop. But these people, like Kun Bo said, she feels like she's dead already. She'll fight to the death. She feels like she's dead. And the way I explained it, why you can't shut these people up is because they feel like, you know, the Titanic is about to hit the iceberg. And so they're going to be shouting, there's an iceberg, there's an iceberg, there's an iceberg. And you can't shame them out of it, and you can't scare them out of it, because they are so sure that this is important and this is right. So this is basically what I have to say, and I hope this will explain a little bit of what's going on in Thailand right now. There's possibly going to be a pro-democracy demonstration at Democracy Monument on Saturday in Thailand, which will be like Friday here. In Los Angeles, Thai people in Los Angeles are going to have a protest tomorrow, marching for democracy. And you might see the best people in Thailand, these nonviolent, peaceful civil rights protesters, dragged off to jail tomorrow. So I just wanted to tell you about that. And I hope that you'll share and try to tell the people you know about this. All right, thank you so much.